The days of Russell M. Nelson's temple building spree are over. If the church hasn't deviated from what they announced in December of last year, then new temples are being announced on a local level from now on. So the Sunday afternoon session of this General Conference will not have featured a long list of temple announcements.
Today, we are pleased to announce plans to construct 17 more temples.
In fact, last conference, before he was even calling himself president of the church, Dallin H. Oaks said this.
As of the April 2025 General Conference, President Russell M. Nelson had announced the construction of 200 new temples. He loved to announce new temples at the conclusion of each General Conference, and we all rejoiced with him. However, with the large number of temples now in the very earliest phases of planning and construction, it is appropriate that we slow down the announcement of new temples. Therefore, with the approval of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, we will not announce any new temples at this conference.
And speaking of potentially pointed comments, many of you will have seen my short from a couple of weeks ago addressing this comment by UK podcaster Benjamin Hancock.
Content creators who are against the church and overly cynical, stakes are closing and the church is dying in the UK. And it's like, well, didn't you hear about the first temples to be announced in the UK since 1998?
My response to Ben bears repeating. The announcement of a temple does not have a direct correlation on increased church attendance, and it certainly doesn't mean that the temple will even be built. Here are 3 examples.
Dubai, United Arab Emirates, a major city yet to be determined in Russia. Shanghai, People's Republic of China.
None of these temples have materialized. In fact, of the 200 temples announced by Russell M. Nelson, as of this time last year, only 75 had been built or broken ground, and I would imagine it is still less than half as of today. With the exact numbers to one side, his temple building spree is over and has left in its wake a backlog of temple building that may or may not be fully completed. And as wealthy as the church is, they are not immune to geopolitics, and certainly in the case of China and Russia, I think Russell M. Nelson got carried away, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if those temples quietly faded into obscurity. And isn't it just too bad that I'm not going to let that happen? I'm not going to let it be forgotten that they announced temples that just aren't going to be built. The other thing I'm sure the church wants to fade into obscurity is the legal battle that they threatened to have with the town of Fairview, Texas. The temple there is going ahead with an approximately 120-foot steeple, down from 172 feet. The building of this temple has caused so much animosity with the local community that most members of the church were informed of the groundbreaking ceremony after the fact, in an email that made clear that the church did not want to put on its usually large ceremony due to local tensions. And all this because the church was insistent that the height of the steeple was part of their religious observance. They asked members of the church to say as much to the town council. So wouldn't it then seem deeply hypocritical if less than 2 years later they unveiled a rendering for the Vienna Austria Temple that is entirely bereft of steeple? It doesn't even have a token one like the Brussels Temple rendering, and to be clear, temple architecture and steeple height never actually mattered.
I hear people, oh, that's a small temple. There's no such thing as a small temple, they're just temples. There's no such thing as small covenants or small ordinances. And see, that to me reflects this fixation on it's the building. Who cares what the size is if you have access to the same covenants and ordinances whereby we have a covenant connection with the Father and the Son?
But to see the church so brazenly abandon a position that they were willing to sue a town into the ground over just doesn't sit right with me. What has happened here? Could it perchance be that the church did not think they could win a legal fight with the Viennese municipal government? But then, is the church's religious observance of steeple height really just dictated by whether they can win a legal battle for it or not? Because if so, doesn't it seem that then the church's position is being tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine, to paraphrase the scripture? Anyway, thank you so much for tuning into my videos this conference weekend. I wasn't sure how it was going to go being abroad while conference was going on, because being away meant that I was ultimately unable to live stream as I normally would. And to be honest, at this moment, recording this the week before General Conference, I still have no idea how this has gone. But to you, the individual watching this, thank you very much. I'll be taking a week off now, but you can get your fix by watching this video here and subscribing so that you don't miss the next video that I put out in 2 weeks' time.